Speaking of funny jokes, hello, Bruce.
I wouldn't know how to take that.
I have nothing to say. Hello, other council members.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Steve.
How's it going? Hi, Gilbert. How's it going, Bruce?
It goes good, Gilbert. How about you?
Good, good.
Where are you calling
I
from?
was expecting.
Where are you calling from?
Hi, Tom.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Olga.
Hi.
So how does this thing work?
So if you want to watch us you can watch us on the dais on YouTube and watch whatever Todd puts up, and then you're dialed in, so everybody that's on the other line, the public line, can hear you. And then the other point is the council's on their own kind of secure line that everybody else can't jump onto, but then there's the public line that people can dial in and hear the meeting, and then they can also participate in the meeting using the free conference call line. And there's no one in the council chambers other than Councilmember Armitage, myself, Todd, Ruby, and Alan Urban is here from CAG. So we are just under the threshold of not having a convening of more than 10 people.
Okay. Mina, do we know how many people are on the phone line besides council and staff?
Yeah, because we have the secondary line and Todd's watching it on the internet.
There's only one person on right now.
There's one person on right now. And then after each call, we get a report of who dialed in. But when we have it open on the computer, Todd can control it. Like, he can keep the lines muted, unmute them so people can participate. And yeah, we've got quite the setup here.
Okay, just curious to see how many actually call into our meetings.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello, Vanessa. We heard you chime in.
Hello.
Hello, Vanessa.
Hello. Hi, Vanessa.
It's like the Waltons.
We could play like a rhyming game, like we could say a word and then everybody has to go around and keep rhyming the word until the 7 o'clock meeting, just to test our brain skills.
Yeah, Steve won't stop talking.
Well, it's good to hear everybody's voice and be in good humor. I really miss having you all on the dais.
All participants are muted.
All right, welcome to everyone on the phone. Whenever there's a public comment hearing session or call to the public, I will unmute this line and allow you to talk, but most of the time I'm going to leave you muted.
All participants are muted.
And we still have a few minutes to go, 2 minutes and counting. Kat says that there are 5 people watching us on YouTube right now. She just texted. And council, we just want to remind you, if you say something, to speak a little louder, just so that way the transmission goes on to the YouTube video. Steve, Councilmember Statico, they said they can hear you just fine. So when I do roll call, like maybe say your name so we can make sure people are kind of hearing you. I'll say it, then just say hello or something extra so we can practice your volume.
Okay, no problem.
Good job, Steve. Yeah, 1 minute. Check. Okay, it is 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for everyone who's watching on YouTube tonight. I will call this meeting to order with roll call. Councilmember Navarrete.
Councilmember Navarrete is here.
Councilmember Estatico.
Councilmember Statico is here.
Councilmember Armitage.
Councilmember Armitage is present.
Councilmember Aguilar.
Councilmember Aguilar is here.
Councilmember Lopez.
Councilmember Lopez is also present.
Vice Mayor Alonso.
Vice Mayor Alonso is here.
Thank you, council. For the record, please show that we have a full council and a quorum is present. Thank you all. You were all heard nice and loud and clear. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation by Councilmember Armitage. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight and we ask for your presence to be in this place. We ask, Lord, that you would give this council, whether they're in this building or not, this staff, this mayor, and this group of people, Lord, wisdom and discernment. We ask, Lord, for understanding. Give us the ability, Lord, to make decisions that are sound and wise concerning the town, Lord God. And we thank you for coming and showing up, and we thank you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. We're going to continue on with our meeting tonight, and we have a special proclamation. And I don't know if Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez is called in or not, but I'm going to read a proclamation. We
All
generally
participants are unmuted.
do this annually. Whereas on June 14th, 1775, the Second Continental Congress, representing the citizens of 13 American colonies, authorized the establishment of the Continental Army. And whereas the collective expression of the pursuit of personal freedom that caused the authorization and organization of the United States Army led to the adoption of the Declaration of Independence and the codification of the new nation basic principles and values in the Constitution. And whereas for the past 245 years, the U.S. Army's central mission has been to fight and win the nation's wars. And whereas the motto of duty, honor, country is the creed by which the American soldier lives and serves. And whereas, no matter what the cause, location, or magnitude of future conflicts, the nation can rely on the U.S. Army to produce well-trained, well-led, and highly motivated soldiers to carry out the missions entrusted to them. And whereas the components of the U.S. Army, to include the Army National Guard, the U.S. Army Reserves, and the regular Army, have contributed immensely to the COVID-19 response. Whereas members of the town of Superior have proudly served and made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation's freedom while serving the United States Army and other branches of our nation's military. Now therefore, I, Mila Besich, Mayor of the town of Superior, Arizona, do hereby proclaim June 14th, 2020 to be the United States Army's 245th birthday, and express appreciation in behalf of the people of the town of Superior to the United States Army and to the dedicated soldiers who have served in it for over 245 years it has been in existence. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Superior, Arizona, to be affixed on this 11th day of June, 2020. And we want to thank all of our residents and their families who have served in the Army and all of our armed forces. We thank Chief Warrant Officer Rodriguez for putting this together and working with us every year and checking in on the town. Mr. Rodriguez, do you have anything to say, sir?
Oh, yes, I do. First, I wanted to make sure that I was muted. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Not well, but we hear you.
Okay. I'll try to speak up. Good evening, Mayor Smith, and members of the City Council, and our members of the City of Superior. Thank you very much for the opportunity to have a few moments to speak with our nation community. Today, we're going to recognize the 246th birthday of the U.S. Army, and we all are fortunate to do what we're celebrating early because we're awesome. Birthdays allow us to reflect on our past and contemplate where we're headed. Birthdays are a time to reassess whether we are achieving our goals and whether we are adhering to the values we've established. On this birthday, it's clear where we are as an Army. It's clear what we have accomplished. It's also clear that Army continues to act in tandem with our nation's values and traditions. When we reflect on our history, it's clear that for 245 years, our Army has been and continues to be an institution that is representative of everything great about the American people. It stands up for the ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our army reflects the will and the determination of the American people. It mirrors the compassion of our communities. It remains firmly committed to defending the Constitution for all Americans. The United States military has been a great source of good in our nation's history. While we often have seen the impact of our efforts overseas, recently the active duty, the Army Reserve, and the National Guard were day and night across our communities to prevent the COVID-19 crisis. This historic mission is just the most recent example of our long-standing support to civilian authorities. From pandemics to hurricanes and from wildfires to providing security after 9/11. In addition to the investment and betterment of our foreign and domestic missions, your Army continues to make huge investments in soldiers' health and welfare. It's focused on programs that protect our soldiers and help them face challenges, to help our teams become even stronger in the future. Your Army is committed to the physical, behavioral, and spiritual and social makeup of each and every soldier. Soldiers take care of soldiers. We don't leave anyone behind. Through our combined efforts, together we remain Army strong. Over the last 245 years, that strength has enabled the Army to become the most preeminent land power in the world, which it will undoubtedly continue to be in the future. A critical conduit of the strength of our Army is our families, all of whom serve side by side with our soldiers. That's who I'm speaking with you today, for the most part. Our families encounter tremendous opportunities and hardships with their soldiers, and they continue to provide their unconditional love and support, which ultimately strengthens the spirit of our Army. Families are a vital piece of our success. In closing, this is a time for us to reflect. There are thousands of Arizonians that have served and continue to serve, and I appreciate not only their sacrifice, but those of their families that stand with them. On the Army's birthday, I would like to thank every soldier, civilian, and family member who has ever served, or had a loved one who has served. Their and your dedication to duty and selfless service has made us Army strong. Thank you again, Mayor Smith, for allowing me to speak, and thank you again for this proclamation.
You're welcome, and thank you for presenting to us tonight in this virtual capacity. We do appreciate your service, and thank you once again. With that, we're going to move on to staff reports.
All
Council
participants are muted.
Things continue to move forward. As you are all probably hearing in the cases today, cases of COVID, positive cases were up 77%. This is widespread community spread now. Right now, Superior is still showing only a 1 to 5. We're in the 1 to 5 categories of positive testing, so I think our residents are doing a good job. It's important that we all maintain physically distance, and there's more recommendation and encouragement to wear masks. So just want to put that out there. We've been working on our branding strategy from last month's meeting where we approved the contract with Dog Cat Mouse. They last night sent us over the branding messaging. Very excited about that. We'll be having some more updates on that. Other than that, it's starting to get a little bit more on the normal side of things and not too busy. Rebuild Superior will be hosting a cemetery cleanup at the end of the month. We'll be sending the dates and times out with that here very soon. And Todd, I'll turn it over to you. Do we have anything else?
I want to make everyone aware that there is a project to repave Stone Avenue that will be starting on Sunday. We've already knocked on every door and tried to hand every resident a letter explaining the need for them to park off the road. It's going to be a thin AC overlay, which should be a significant improvement to that stretch, to one of our most heavily traveled roads. We're asking that everyone avoid driving on the pavement for up to 24 hours after it's set. It takes a little while for the asphalt to set, especially in the heat of this time of year. Sunday, they're going to begin grinding the verge. They have to cut it down so it's flush with the curb for the thin AC overlay. So that work should be starting on Sunday. Hopefully the project will not take longer than 2 or 3 days. And we need to get this project, the scheduling's a little tight, which is why we're starting on a weekend. We have to get this project done before the end of the fiscal year so we can pay it all out to pay down our HERF balance this year.
Thank you, Todd. Council, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. If anyone has anything they'd like to take off of the consent agenda, we can do that and approve it separately. For the public's, I'm going to read it off so everyone on the YouTube can hear it. Approval of minutes of the regular council meeting from May 14th, 2020. Approval of letter of engagement with Hinton Burdick for fiscal year 1920 audit. Approval of Town of Superior self-funded employee medical benefit plan Care Plus amendment. This amendment is attached and made a part of the Town of Superior self-funded employee medical benefit plan Care Plus, the plan effective July 1st, 2020. Approval of AZ Cares Fund certification form and of the terms and conditions to receive AZ Cares Act funding in the amount of $364,855. This amount is based on population and is a reimbursement for public safety expenses for the Town of Superior. Todd Pryor, Chief Executive of the Town of Superior, has authority on behalf of the appropriation Town of Superior to request grant payments from the state of Arizona for federal funds appropriated pursuant to Section 601 of the Social Security Act as added by Section 5001 of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, Pub L number 116-136, Division A, Title 5, that is March 27, 2020. Number 5, approval of emergency facilities and land use agreement between the United States Forest Service and the Town of Superior for use of the helibase located at the Superior Municipal Airport for the Sawtooth Fire incident effective June 1st, 2020 until the end of the incident. And I'd like to thank Councilmember Armitage for being our liaison to that and coordinating with our local fire response. We're glad to see that the Sawtooth Fire has been mostly contained now. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
You forgot the department reports.
Oh, and the department reports are on the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent
So
agenda.
moved.
Okay, there's a motion here in the room by Councilmember Armitage. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Lopez. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're going to move on to new business now. Council, and the first part of this meeting, and for the public that are listening and participating on YouTube, we're going to open the public hearing for the approval of resolution number 2020-624, a resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Superior, Pinal County, adopting the fiscal year 2020-21 budget. Staff recommends approving this resolution. This adopts the final budget discussed in the work session in April. The tentative budget was approved at the May 14th, 2020 regular council meeting. Once the tentative budget is adopted, changes may be made to before the final budget is adopted, but the total may not be increased. So at this time, I will open it up to anyone in the public who may have questions on the budget at this time, if you are on the call. Okay, hearing none. Council, do you have any questions or comments in the public hearing phase of the budget?
No.
Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. And council, if you would like, you can make a motion to approve. I will open the floor for motions or further discussion.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion on the floor by
Second.
Councilmember Statico. Is that a second by Councilmember Aguilar? Second by Councilmember Aguilar. All in favor?
Sure.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have a budget. Thank you. Thank you to staff for putting everything together and watching our budget so closely. We appreciate that. Moving on to agenda item B, which is also a public hearing, discussion and possible approval regarding the use of CDBG funds. Discussion, the town is expected to receive approximately $223,627 in fiscal year 2020 federal CDBG funds from the Arizona Department of Housing regional account. The town also intends to apply for $300,000 in fiscal year 2020 CDBG funds from the State Special Projects SSP account. A public hearing is being held to discuss the potential projects. It is expected that the town council will select the final project at this hearing. And council, I have to remind you that I think it was at our March or April meeting, I think it was the March meeting, we discussed all the types of projects in that first public hearing. So we cannot add new items to that list. This is basically the last and final call. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Alan Urban from CAG to go over that, and he's going to remind us and review the projects. Then to the public, we will open the public hearing for you to weigh in on any of the commentary there. So Alan, I'm going to turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor, and thank you for having me here this evening. Hello to the mayor and citizens of the town of Superior and council members. So as the mayor has mentioned, she gave you the amount of the potential funding that you were going to apply for. And what I am required to do at each one of these hearings is to go over the fundamentals of the Community Development Block Grant. That's what CDBG stands for. This is a HUD funding program. And the foundation of that is a public process, and that's what we're doing here this evening. What Mayor Bessich mentioned earlier is the prior hearing was the first step of that public process. And in that hearing, what you did was have a discussion of all the potential projects that you thought you might want to apply for funding for. And so you created a list that you will choose from tonight. And as she mentioned, you can't add to that list. You have to choose from the list that you presented previously or created previously. Now, some of the other caveats on the program is that these projects have to address one of three needs in the community that HUD has defined. One is it has to benefit a low to moderate income community, or it has to address in some fashion blight within your community, either prevent it, abate it, or minimize it for your community. The other would be what they call an emergency need. For example, if you had a windstorm that knocked out communications, or you had a flood that took out a water treatment plant, or washed out a major road, something like that. So that's a relatively rare occurrence. So those are the three categories of need that the CDBG program is designed to address. So generally in the instance of Superior, we're looking at either the blight situation or benefit to the low to moderate income community. The income category is where we end up with looking at the income surveys that we've done in the past. That's what qualifies the community for that particular category. So a couple of the other requirements are that all these decisions be made in the public venue like the hearing this evening. The other is that there be some type of agreement by the community, the town council, the city itself, that if one of the projects are to either temporarily or permanently displace someone because of the project, that they agree that they will take care of that situation, either on a temporary relocation situation or some type of permanent accommodation for someone that maybe their home or their business is displaced by a project that's funded by CDBG funding. So in that instance, we have what's called a relocation resolution. The town renews that every several years. We make sure that that's in place before you apply for your funding. It's required, otherwise you can't have the money. So we make sure that that's always done before we submit your application. You've got one that's in place currently. We make sure that's current. There's a 5-year cycle on that. We make sure that that's current before we apply. The other is that there is some process in place to address any type of complaints that the public might have about either what project you selected, how it was conducted as it went forward, etc. In this instance, they would simply come to the town hall, we file a complaint with Mr. Crosshair, and that has to be recorded. If that satisfies them, that's where it ends. That has to be part of the record for the project. If they want to go further, then you can bring it to me, we can take it to the Department of Housing and the state. But there has to be a process in place, and that's a commitment by the town. And again, that's a qualifier for getting the CDBG funding. The other item is that we always review what types of projects we've done in the past. The last project was the Parks project. Prior to that, we've done some other projects within the community. Previously, a project for your water treatment plant, your sewer plant. So there's a broad spectrum of projects that can be done under CDBG funding, but there are certain limitations on how they're done and some strict regulations to follow. Now, one of the things I always point out to people is that CDBG funding is relatively rare condition in the sense that there's no match required. You don't have to put down 25% of your own money in order to get this funding. You may add all that you want, either in-kind help or cash match, but nothing of that is required. It isn't like other programs, either government funding programs or private foundations where they might require 20% or 50-50 match or something like that. CDBG is basically, in that sense, free money in that you don't have to match money to get money. So you get the whole allocation to spend on the project. And with that, we can review the projects that you have listed and walk through your discussion as to what your selection might be.
Okay. Todd, do you want to go over those, or?
Do you have that list, Alan? Do you want to read it out?
You,
I certainly do.
say you can read it out, Alan.
So in this particular go-around, we had a very extensive list. We had 10 items. The first one was Roosevelt Multi-Generational Center parking lot. Second one was police station remodel. The third was transfer station improvements. The fourth is airport infrastructure. The fifth was blight abatement prevention. The sixth was construction of ball fields / sports fields. Seventh was installation of energy efficiency measures in municipal properties. Eight was wayfinding signs / water and trails capital improvements. 9 was parks per plan. And 10 was street projects. So what I do after we compile the list is I go back and I review each of the project concepts, and I review them with the EOH, Department of Housing, which is the CDBG agent for the federal funding. And so a couple of these were disqualified in the sense that they fell under economic development. Now, that used to be a category of project eligible under CDBG until right about the time we did this, period. This year, they took that off the eligibility list, just about the time we were doing this here. So that's no longer considered an eligible project category. So things like the airport fell off of that list around the time we were having this discussion. So that's one of those that you won't be able to put forward.
Can I make a comment there?
Certainly.
I don't see how you can remove the airport issue off the agenda when, in fact, should we put an emergency heliport out there at the airport, it would serve the community in terms of emergency evacuations out of the town of Superior. Currently, what we do is we land emergency aircraft in the parking lot of the town of the Superior High School, which is, in my view, can be, in certain instances, pretty unsafe. As it is now, they go out there with emergency vehicles and surround the area when they land a helicopter. So
Mr. Armitage, I would not disagree with your second part of your comment. That was not part of the discussion in the hearing.
I didn't figure it would be. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, but we can't add to the concepts at this point. You talked about T hangers and water and fire hydrants and other improvements out there, but we did not talk about the emergency services of any fashion in the hearing.
Well, I could have shown you, at the time of the conversation, I could have showed you our airport master plan, which has heliports on it, which probably should have been considered when you were throwing this out. I'm just saying.
Okay.
I don't think it, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if we as a town don't begin to invest in our airport, it will never become in any way, shape, or form functional for the town. This is normal. Normal towns have their air evac equipment land at their airport. We have an airport, we can't even use it. And to me, it's a safety issue, and it's not just a safety issue in general, it's a safety issue for everybody, including the low-income people.
I don't disagree with that concept, but as I said, this was not part of the discussion in here.
Just really quick, I happened to look at my phone, I didn't have my watch set right. Were there, people on the phone are having a hard time hearing you and on YouTube, Alan?
Okay.
So you may need to really like
There's a mic there. You
speak
can
up or
speak
I have
into the
all
mic.
of them here.
and
This
just
is not on?
for a recap, for everybody who's on the phone, Alan's went over our list of 10 items. And there's been discussion on that there's been changes at the Department of Housing that you can no longer use your CDBG funding for economic development related projects. And so at this time, the way our original list sits, what we had intended to, like the first phases that we thought were okay for our airport, are more on the economic development side. We did not address the public safety side. So my question, Alan, to you is, because we have a very comprehensive plan and public safety is a big part of it, can we take that back? But then I have to go back to Todd, because don't we need all these other things to happen, like all the water, sewer, all that to happen before we can put in helipads?
Helipads are actually the next item on our list. They could be installed. We have funding for electrical. The helipads could be installed, yes.
Okay.
The question would be, is there an appeal for the HUD thing, or if that ship sailed?
There isn't. So there's a couple of ways to do that. If, after discussing the rest of these items, you do want to look at the heliport, we have one route we could go. You could take that as your selection. We can go back to ADOH with the emergency services concept. We can then, if they say no, we have a second hearing, actually a third hearing, and you can go back to this list and choose another project.
I thank you for that. I have a question, because I don't remember, does all of the money have to go towards a singular project?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay.
And so that is one of the considerations, is that when you look at the projects, and this is part of what Todd and I would have discussed, is okay, can we take all the money and do this single item, or are we going to have money left over, which you don't want to do. We don't want to give money back to the program. But let me finish the thought first, is that so you can always go back and do, before we submit the application, we can always change the project if it's done in time for me to change the application before September 1st, which is the deadline to submit.
They still can't hear you, Alan. You're going to have to try to use a louder voice, or come use one of these mics.
Okay?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, okay. I'm going to have Alan move over to another mic because people can't hear him.
So Madam Mayor, it's a public hearing right now?
Yes, we're still in the
Correct.
public hearing right now, so we're trying to make sure everybody can hear what's going on. So please bear with us. Thank you, everybody.
So before council comments, is there anybody out there I would ask that has a comment in the public about this issue?
Yes, we'll open. Alan, have you finished your overall explanation and process?
As far as process is
Okay.
concerned.
Because people couldn't hear you. Give me just 1 second.
Sorry.
Can you go over?
Sorry, this is Councilmember Navarrete.
and I just have a quick question regarding the list. So Alan mentioned that as of right now, the airport infrastructure would not qualify. And I think he was trying to say, he said there was more than one, and I don't believe he got to the other one. So I'd like to know which other one or ones do not qualify.
I'm gonna have him, because we're hearing that people were having a hard time hearing, I'm gonna have Alan regroup, read over all 10 things, and then when you do that, tell us which ones don't qualify. So let's just have a quick regroup so we can make sure everybody heard everything.
So we had 10 items on the list. The first one was the Roosevelt multi-generational parking lot. Second was the police station remodel. The third is the transfer station improvements. 4 was airport infrastructure. 5 was the blight abatement and prevention. 6 was construction of ball fields / sports fields. 7 was installation of energy efficiency measures in municipal properties. 8 was wayfinding signs / water and trails capital improvements. 9 was parks per plan, and 10 was street projects. So were you able to hear all those?
Yes, which ones don't qualify?
Well, so we started with the airport. Roosevelt multi-generational, since it would be a dirt parking lot, did not qualify as a finished project. The police station remodel as a public building did not qualify unless we were going to do a historic building, in which case it would be a restoration project, and it would be limited as to what we could do as far as changing the building. The transfer station improvements was another one that was considered a trash project, which they would not fund. We went down that path with a trash truck last year with another community. Street projects, we did not want to do that one because of your HERF funding situation. The parks for the plan, we were just finishing a parks plan, and that one, I don't remember exactly why Todd and I.
The discussion was, there's nothing in the parks plan that would allow us to build that, and part of the other issue is the area where we really want to put baseball fields is in the floodplain, and community development block grants will not pay for floodplain projects anyway.
And that's specifically a floodway situation for your town. The wayfinding signs and water and trails capital improvements, that's a combination situation, and that one's going to be a tough sell. And that was another one that I think was a dollar situation as well.
Yeah, part of the problems is even that grouped project is below the 220,000, so we wouldn't be able to use our full money, and that's with grouping projects, which they have generally rejected in the past. So that one has challenges. It also has land use challenges. We don't even own the land or have agreements to build on that. So a good portion of that project could run into technical hassles, which could delay it past our CDBG period and create problems for future projects. So that one is pretty problematic.
Okay, so
were these prioritized in any way?
And that's a council decision. What Alan and I did pretty much is went through and evaluate what the costs of these would be, and what and whether or not they would fly with ADOH, and so that's pretty much what he's done.
Okay, understood. But there was 1 through 10. I was just wondering if they were prioritized in any way. Which one does staff recommend? I know it's a council decision, but what does staff recommend based on our budget of what we have for the monies that are available?
I would recommend blight. I'm going to have to spend about $100,000 next year on blight, whether or not I use the grant money or not. If I have the grant money, I could radically extend the reach of the program and deal with some of the worst long-term blight issues in the community. But again, that's a council decision. It'd be very easy for me to spend that money. Another big advantage is I'm pretty I'm pretty well versed on the abatement process, so I can do the paperwork and the legal filings without breaking a sweat. And we contract out that entire project, so we don't put any strain on town staff to make that happen.
Okay, and
This is council member Navarrete. I just wanted to just back up just 1 second because from what I heard from Alan, pretty much all of them don't qualify in some way or form, and all we have left is the blight abatement anyway.
So Alan, could you reread the list to the ones that you feel are not disqualified? Just, it's a pretty short list, I think it's like 3.
what's not disqualified?
Yeah.
Well, since they took the economic development off, kind of as we were working this, pretty much all of them. We thought we could work with the Roosevelt Center, but they will not accept the language in the handbook was a bit
So which ones
obscure.
are? I guess that's what we're asking.
Pretty much the blight. The blight is the only one that's a clear-cut contract as far as I could get through ADOH.
We should have started with that.
Yeah. So this is for the project we're choosing to spend the 223,000,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
Part of the big challenge
And
with,
so I see in the description as well, we're gonna apply for another 300,000 from the state special project, and that's a separate application process. And do those have separate requirements, and could possibly one of these other projects, should we use that money for that if we get it?
That's a standard language in the ad from ADOH. State Special Projects is a competitive bid process, and Superior has never chosen to go that way.
Could any of these other projects like the airport, would those qualify for state special project dollars, or do they still under, because it, are some
They have
the
the
same
same restrictions.
Okay.
Unless we go back to Mr. Armitage's suggestion about the emergency services scenario, you'd have to discuss with ADOH, but
But what we're deciding on right now is just the project for the 223, correct? Or we have
Yes.
to choose something for the 300?
as it's been described to me in the past, the state special projects are very difficult to get. You have to show huge significant need, and I don't know that Alan in the past has not advised us that we had a good enough project to get that money in the past. So absent his advice that we have a good project that is worth applying for, I don't know if state special projects is our best play. Part of the problem with this money this year is it's cut in half from the last one. We had 417,000, we have 223 this time. It really limits the scope of projects. Especially, for instance, $223,000, we're going to do a street project. It would take $40,000 to engineer it. It'll take probably $20,000 to administer it. So by the time we're done, we have $150,000, and that will not do a huge project. We'd have to pick a small street and do a small project, and that's kind of.
But they qualify. From what I've heard, that it doesn't qualify anyway. So
it does qualify, but it would not help our HERF balance. So we'd spend on it, and we would get our HERF balance down. It doesn't mean we can't spend on a street project. This means it doesn't necessarily. Compared to the $600,000 and $200,000 from our own general fund we have to spend next year for an $800,000 project, it's a drop in the bucket. If you try to combine it with one of those projects, then the entire project would then have to pass Davis-Bacon. So you can't commingle it with other funds, which means you can't expand it to a larger project. It's a bit of a poison pill if we try to drop it into a major street project.
So, I'm gonna open the lines to anybody in the public who may or may not have a comment. Do we have many on the line, Todd?
We have Susan Anderson and James Schenk.
Okay, we have 2 members of the public on the line. If there's anybody watching on YouTube, you can call in to the conference call number. But is there anyone from the public who wishes to address council in this public hearing regarding the CDBG 2020 allocation?
Mila, this is you. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I think it's the problem that I'm having here, the only two people I can hear are you, Mila, and Todd. Everybody else is garbled or sounds like they're a million miles away. There's a little bit of reason, but it's really difficult to know what to even talk about. I know everybody's struggling with this, but that's just an FYI.
Okay, this is Jim, and yes, I would second Sue's notion. So take my statement with a grain of, I understood half of what was said. I'm kind of agreeing with Bruce, if I understood him right, that yes, there are safety implications to having a helipad, and that is a project that we should seriously consider. On the other side of that, I would throw my support behind whatever the council decides.
Okay, so council, I'm not sure if you can hear that. Ms. Anderson said that she's having a hard time hearing. For the record, that's what it's going to show. We're doing our best here to speak as loudly as we can. And Sue, really the only person who has been talking so far has been me and Todd. There's been some dialogue from the council just asking for some clarifying questions.
Madam Mayor, this is Councilman Statica.
Yes?
I did hear.
You know, so I don't know why we keep talking about the airport when it's not on the list. The only thing that seems to be on the list is the blight mitigation. So, I mean, I don't know why we're not just going with that to begin with.
Well, we're still in the public hearing, so we've heard from the public. Mr. Shank, his comments in case council.
Mayor?
Yes?
Can you recap what Mr. Shank said?
Yeah.
Because it was difficult to hear.
That's what I'm gonna try to paraphrase for you. His comments were that he would support whatever decision the town makes, but he did ask for clarification. He does feel there should be support to Mr. Armitage's argument that the helipads should not be considered economic development, but health and human safety. So could that be an option? Jim, is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
Jim agreed that was fair enough.
May I make another comment?
Sue would like to make another comment.
Sue is gonna make another comment.
Go ahead, Sue. Speak up as much as you can.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. One of the things that I did hear was flood mitigation, and you all on the stronger on flood mitigation. And I can see some really good opportunities if the CDBG funds would use donate or allocate some money to that and work with Regional Superior. We have a $96,000 grant from USDA right now, the housing preservation grant. We had another one where we get 11 rooms in town, either partially or fully, that one was for about $35,000. So these grants out there for us, if we can get additional help, we can move much faster through the community and make a difference with some of our homeowners. Some of the things we have seen, I've only seen pictures I've chosen just personally, like I want to know who the people are. They don't want to be biased, they can be accused of being biased. Some of the pictures are horrible. We shouldn't have people living in conditions the way they are. It's more than the adult flood, more than reflecting on really serious health hazards and safety hazards. So with additional money, we can really tackle some situations that are critical in our town. Thank you.
And I doubt that council, you were able to hear Sue completely because I had a hard time hearing her. And it's just.
No, we can't hear,
Okay.
we can't hear the people from the public at all.
Okay, so Sue's comment was a favorable comment to work on blight, in part because Rebuild Superior has the $97,000 USDA grant to work on housing preservation that they've been very successful in. They've been working with a lot of different homeowners on some repairs and things like that. So money to go into the blight program that could also parallel into the projects Rebuild is doing could make a huge difference in our blight strategy. Sue, is that a fair assessment of what you said?
Yes, it is, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, all right. Playing, shuttle, it's like playing telephone right now. With that being said, I am going to call for the public hearing to end. And at this time, we're going to go back into open session, and council, you can have further discussion and or make a motion or ask further questions of Mr. Urban.
I wanted to read into the record real quick because Alan handed me a note and we spoke on the side, and that's probably not the best way to do it. He mentioned that Rebuild definitely could work with the town if there were projects that, if the homes were survivable. So some of these homes will be tear down, some will be board up and close up, and Rebuild has worked with the town on these projects in the past by painting and doing cosmetic changes to them and try to make them more marketable, which has had good dividends to get the properties back in use. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't, there wasn't discussion that wasn't in the record.
Question?
Yes.
Regarding the airport, Todd, is it reasonable to assume that we can spend $223,000 in reference to helipad and the drive that would be needed in and around the helipad to get the emergency vehicles there?
The original helipad bid was for very limited access with roadway. By expanding the roadway to make sure that you have full parking lots and year-round access for heavy equipment like fire trucks and staging areas, spending the $200,000 would not be a challenge. Asphalt's very expensive.
Okay, council, we've heard from the public. We've had a bit of an open discussion in our public hearing. We know that there's a lot more restrictions than what we had in the past and what we had when we first set our list. So I'm going to open it up to council to make a motion to set our direction.
Are we closing the public hearing now?
The public hearing's been closed.
Go with the blight.
There's a motion on the
Make a
floor.
motion to go with the blight option.
There's a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Alonso. Is that a second? Is that Councilmember Navarrete or Councilmember Lopez?
Navarrete.
Okay, and Councilmember Navarrete made a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Let the record show that there are 6 ayes and 1 nay. Do you want a voice vote, Ms. Cervantes?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to have to do a roll call vote right now. So state your name when you make your vote. Councilmember Navarrete?
Yes, Councilmember Navarrete.
Councilmember Estatico?
Councilmember Statico, yes.
Councilmember Armitage?
Councilmember Armitage, no.
Councilmember Aguilar?
Councilmember Aguilar, yes.
Councilmember Lopez?
Yes, for Councilmember Lopez.
Vice Mayor Alonso?
Yes, for Vice Mayor Alonso.
And I am also a yay. So the motion carries to go with blight with a 6-1 vote. Thank you, Alan. Thank you to everybody in the public and council for your patience as we navigate all this technology stuff. Okay, now I'm going to move on to agenda item C, discussion, possible approval to sign contract for professional services between the Town of Superior and Colburn for professional plan review services. Staff recommends approving this contract. Colburn will provide plan review services and inspection services. The inspection services to be provided may include, but are not limited to, field observation of all construction activity, preparation of daily reports, review of submittals, and other duties as designed. Fiscal impact. The cost of the Colburn professional plan review services will be 75% of the building permit fees only. The building code fees will be adopted at the July 2020 Town Council meeting. And just a reminder, Council, we're moving in this direction because we were no longer going to be able to continue to use Pinal County as our plan review services. So it's kind of like we're all growing up and we'll be bringing some new people to join our team. Do we have any questions or comments from Council on this contract? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
approval, Councilor Lopez.
There's a motion on the floor by Councilmember Lopez. Is there a second?
Second, Councilmember Navarrete.
Second by Councilmember Navarrete. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item D, discussion possible approval of intergovernmental agreement between the state of Arizona and the town of Superior, project location name northeast corner of West Keener Drive and South Magma Avenue. Staff recommends approving this IGA. The state with the town will design and construct a parking lot between State Route 177 and US 60 at milepost 227. The project, as part of the project environmental clearances, will be obtained. The project will also install curbing, striping, and armor retention basins. The town will maintain the project. Use of the project is for parking purposes only. Such purposes may include overflow visitors to Queen Creek downtown or a park and ride. Other uses will require a written request to be submitted 30 days prior to the event. Council, I just want to provide some backup. This project came to be because of Svetlana, our engineering tech, when she sat in on these meetings and finding some ways that these projects could create some additional support to Superior. This lot is actually ADOT right-of-way and ADOT property, so it'll be a great improvement. It'll provide some better parking for the trailhead and also our downtown. Does anybody have any questions or comments on? Yes.
How many cars will we be able to park in there?
I believe it was 30, but
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
I'd have to check with Svetlana. She's doing the final design on it. I'll share that with council as soon as I get it from her.
Wonderful.
So this will be a wonderful addition. Is there any other questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve.
There's a motion by Councilmember Estatico. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Armitage. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to agenda item E. Discussion possible approval of a grant agreement between the town of Superior grantee and the state of Arizona acting through the governor's office grantor, sometimes individually, a party, or collectively parties. The reward amount is $364,855 from the AZ CARES Fund to the town of Superior. Staff recommends approving this item. Purpose: distribution to local Arizona jurisdictions of federal financial assistance from the U.S. Treasury's Coronavirus Relief Fund, CRF, Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, CDFA number 221-019, as part of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities CARES Act. The agreement project period is March 1st, 2020 through December 30th, 2020. And for everyone in the public that's watching, this is Superior's allocation for the CARES funding that the state of Arizona received. Bigger cities like Mesa, Phoenix, Tucson, Maricopa County, and Pima County, I believe, received direct allocations from the federal government. I'd like to thank our Pinal County Board of Supervisors for advocating for all small counties and small towns and cities to make sure that these funds were released to us. So we need a motion to approve this so we can move on. Yes.
Can we have a copy of Governor Ducey's letter added as a part of the official motion?
I believe that was part of the packet.
It's part of the packet, so it's part of the record.
When I received the package, I printed the entire package and give it to council. This is divided in two sections, though. The first section up front was the authority for me to apply. They've already awarded this on the promise that we would approve it tonight, and the money's supposed to be in our bank account today or tomorrow.
So I'd like to thank staff for putting it together, and this funding is really important to help all of our communities, so we're very grateful that this funding has been made available. So we have a motion to approve agenda item E. There's a motion by Councilmember Aguilar. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Armitage. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We're going to move on to agenda item F. Discussion possible approval of spending of the AZ CARES Act reimbursement in the amount of $364,855. As we know, COVID-19 continues to be a fluid situation. The Arizona's CARE Act will give the town a reimbursement of public safety expenses in the amount of $364,844. The amount is based on population. The breakdown of spending is as follows. Staff put together a plan. Council, this is for our discussion as well, but this was kind of identified as some ways to keep some projects moving in our community that are COVID related. So we would reserve $164,855 would remain in the bank in case of a second COVID outbreak, should we need to make some additional purchases, or should we have another major shutdown of the economy. $97,000 would be used for small business grants. $3,000 would go towards Local First Arizona Foundation to administer the small business grants. $35,000 for the wayfinding signs project, and $65,000 for the general fund. As you all know, we've kept having to move our general fund plan dollars around every year because we've had to bring on other consultants to our team to help us with other important community matters. So we're open for discussion. This is our recommendation, and I know our businesses could use this support, that's for sure. So we're open for any questions or comments.
Discussion.
Question. This is Council Member Navarrete.
Okay.
So there's not really restrictions on how we can spend the money. Is that correct?
That is correct. There's going to be an application process through Local First. They will assess need, that there's an impact of COVID, and then they will determine how much, based on the size of the business, they suggest that we grant. They will bring that back to the town and allow us to approve that before it goes out.
Okay. And that's for the small business grant, but I guess in regards to the allocation to us.
We have already qualified by submitting public safety spending. We had to submit the payroll for the period from March to the end of the year. And that was in the range of $900,000. It was in excess of our allotment. So they have given us the money to reimburse us for that. Now that money can be used for basically any general fund purpose. We don't specifically have to use it for COVID issues. We can use it to replace lost revenues. But the intent and the purpose of the original federal legislation and everyone along the chain is that we use this to help to recover from COVID. So I have, and I know the mayor has indicated to me that it's important that we stay in those basic areas that we feel are COVID impacts and can be, and can really stick to the intent of this money.
And for those on
I agree with that.
For those on the phone that may not have heard Councilmember Navarrete's questions, her question was around any type of restrictions for the use of this funding, which Todd explained. And Todd explained both the grant program with Local First, which is a separate agenda item, but that these funds can be spent on other projects. It kind of has no restrictions. So thank you, Councilmember Navarrete. Councilmember Armitage, do you have questions?
Yeah, you said, and I understand that you want to move in the direction of the COVID-19 situation, yet you have at least a quarter of this money going to non-COVID-19 projects, right?
Well, the general plan was removed from our budget this year and placed in contingency due to the potential loss of revenue that would make it not able to do it. So it remains in our contingency fund, yeah, it was canceled because of COVID. So
but you're still putting $165,000 in reserves.
Right.
So we don't know how we're going to spend that money yet, right?
Right. And it's with the fluid situation of COVID and with the increase in cases right now. Previous outbreaks have had second waves and even third waves. So I'm suggesting that we hold that money in reserve in case it's needed for important emergency issues.
I have no problem with that. What I would like to recommend, though, is that some money be set aside for our airport. We have to continually maintain it, and we have to work on infrastructure and safety issues, obviously, for helipads. We have money that's set aside from ADOT when they expanded the US 60. They gave us money. We sold them some land. They gave us some money, and that money is not going to last forever. For grants that we get, particularly from ADOT Aeronautical, we always have to have we have to add a portion, whether it's 5% or 25%. We never really know right off the top what it's going to be. And I think we should, if we're going to see our airport grow and be used, we should set aside some money into the airport situation so that when those times come up, we don't have to try and guess where we're going to get that money from. And I'm not suggesting a lot of money. I'm just saying that it is an investment in the economic development of our town. It's an investment in the safety concerns that we have concerning the use of a helipad. And the airport has been put on the back burner for so very long that we need to invest in that if we are going to see some fruit come out of that in the future.
The discussion of the ADOT funding that we got when they expanded the highway, there's about 13,000 of that left. So it's not a big nest egg, but it's enough to meet the match if we receive the ASIP money, which we've been on the list for the last 3 years, but have never received. As far as a larger nest egg, that would be entirely up to the council. I'm fine with whatever decision the council gives us. It could also be readdressed later if the 164,000 was not necessarily used for COVID later, that it would stay in that account and it's not going anywhere.
Okay, well then how about if we do set aside some of that $165,000 that we're going to be putting in advance, and we earmark that at this point for use, say even if it's just to match the funds that we have there, or say $25,000.
I don't think there's any
earmark money that can be held there, right?
I didn't get his question.
So Vice Mayor Alonso had a question. Can we hold on to the money, earmark the money? We can, right?
It's general fund unrestricted money, so we can make it goes into a special fund. It stays in that fund. It's a special. It was a special fund set up just for that money, so it stayed isolated. But it's up to the council whether we earmark it for something. And really, what that means is I can't spend it for anything else. So that's entirely up to the council. I'm fine with it anyway.
But what I'm saying is, if we don't spend that $165,000 specifically for COVID-19 requirements or use issues, then in that case, perhaps we could set $25,000 aside for the airport fund, because we still have to maintain it. It has to be plowed. We have to have the trees and the trees removed from the sides of the runways. This all costs money, and I think we've been probably using it out of other sources. You've been good enough to be able to find money to do that. This would, at least, if we had that fund out there, we could use it for those. We could use that money. We could have that money set aside for those issues.
Council, any further questions or comments?
I have a question. So at what point do we decide how to spend the $165,000? Would they need to come back to council and say, okay, we're going to use it for certain other things? Or is it just the discretion of the town manager when he thinks it?
My procurement limit is $25,000. I can't spend anything over $25,000 without express council consent.
Yeah, but you wouldn't necessarily spend that all in one lump sum. I mean, you could spend 25 at a time.
That's true. This money, like I said, it's given to us for a specific cause. So I would hesitate to touch it without the council giving me firm guidance as to what direction it needs to go in. I feel strongly that the intent of the legislation is to help people recover from COVID. So I don't want to. I don't want to do anything that we haven't discussed and make sure that we've given it full thought before we do it. Even the only item that's actually on the agenda for actual expenditure tonight is the grant. Everything else, these are suggestions. I would still have to write RFQs for 2 of them and bring them back to the council for final approval. So I will be unlikely to spend that money within the next 3-4 months.
If the purpose of this money is for COVID related, I don't see the airport being a part of that.
That's because I'm probably the only one on the council that really cares about what goes on at the airport and sees it as a potential future financial resource for the town.
Okay, hold on, Councilmember Armitage.
I'm not saying we don't care about the airport. I'm saying this money is allocated for for COVID related issues. I understand you care about the airport. I think a lot of us on the council do care about the airport. I'm just saying this probably is not the money that should be used for that particular purpose.
But then could we argue that the wayfinding signs is not related?
That was brought forward by, that would be, the reason that's on there is it's brought forward by downtown businesses who are concerned that there's not enough traffic for their businesses to stay alive, and they are asking for support to improve our signage plan so that we can get more traffic off the highway. Whether it's a recovery and economic development issue, but it's only arguably so. It's just what our business community has asked us to do with some of the COVID money.
And the waypoint signage, much like the general plan, has been one of those items that, because of budget restrictions or things like this that have happened, it never gets moved forward. It was a project the chamber was going to also take on. They've had an $18,000 loss to their budget because of the loss of Apache Leap Days and losses that they've taken. That's why we put that on there. It doesn't even, we heard from the business community. My thought process on this is to approve this as stated, but come back in 3 months, we do another assessment of where we're at with COVID and look at allocating some of the money towards our airport at that time. And only because I agree with Mr. Armitage on the fact that the helicopter landing at the school and all that is, we've got to start moving some projects forward. When we've talked to ADOT about our ASIP projects and all of that, we always fall a little bit short. So it might be in our best interest to find some funding so we can do a few of these things, making our grant more viable for funding from ADOT. This is just me kind of hearing everybody and trying to kind of come up with a reasonable option here.
Another item for discussion would be, I have $40,000 I was going to have to spend in July to demolish a building that was engulfed by fire and is in partial collapse, the old tortilla factory on Santa Rita. If we use our blight money for community development block grant to deal with these abatement issues, that money would remain in our budget and could be swept for other functions. So there's this community development block grant taking some pressure off the blight fund could make could allow the council to make the decision to move that money elsewhere. And the community development block grant is not an act.
Mayor, this is Councilman Aguilar.
Yes.
I think our staff has looked at all the options that we have, and that's why they presented this. And I think down the road, it's very important that we do something with the airport, but in 3 months, a lot of things can change, and that's why we need to make this decision that we keep that money in there and keep it as planned because of all these things that could happen. And we just got to be on the safe side, but it seems to me that staff has checked and looked at all these options and this would be our best option, and I think it'll work for all of us and the town.
right, well, I think we've had a very robust discussion on this. Do we have a motion to move forward as presented? Do you want the motion as I suggested with coming back in 3 months to evaluate where we're at with the 164,855? There's some options on the table, and I'm going to leave it up to council.
I have another question.
Yes.
Is there any possibility that down the road, the state of Arizona is going to give us more funding for coronavirus 19? In other words, I guess my question is that's a lot of money that we're putting to one side, $165,000. And if the fact is that we have a greater outbreak and there's more money down the road, then we've saved it, we put it aside for nothing.
That's true. I would say that we've gotten some revised, as I sent to council last week, we've gotten revised revenue numbers from the state, and the town itself is going to take at least a $70,000 hit to our revenues. And this, if it's not used for some other function, could help offset that. It's, and again, the situation is fluid with COVID at this point. There's so much change happening, it's hard to predict what's going to happen next month. And I do think that there might be more money coming. There's a phase 4 that the Democrats in the White House are pushing on the federal level. It's still not clear whether any of it's going to pass, but it has lots of infrastructure and transportation money into it. So that might be opportunities to look for grant funding for things like the airport and for more streets.
Yes, and that was a topic of our call today with Senator Sinema's office, is that they're still moving forward with the phase 4. I believe is it the HEROES Act now? I forget which.
There are several competing legislations that are out there. It's unclear which pieces and parts are actually going to be moved forward. Again, it's an ongoing negotiation, but there's all of them include some sort of infrastructure.
And there's a push for direct federal funding for cities and towns of all sizes and counties from the federal government in each of these different acts. But we don't know, and they don't expect Congress to come back and act on that until after the July 4th holiday.
And I would say that it's unlikely we're going to get another this check in the mail, unless they do another act that gives direct to cities and towns. It just seems the resistance to that's fairly high. It's possible, but it may not happen.
So
I make a motion to move as suggested.
okay, there's a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Alonso to move forward as suggested by staff. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a second by Councilmember Lopez. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, council. Going on to agenda item G. Discussion and approval service agreement between Local First Arizona Foundation and the Town of Superior. Local First will distribute small business grants to small businesses registered to do business in the Town of Superior. The goal of the small grants is to help Superior businesses survive the crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. The AZ CARES Act reimbursement money will be used. The cost would be $3,000 for the admin fees and $97,000 for the small business grants. And a few of our small businesses were able to get some small chunks of funding from Local First due to generous contributions by BHP and Resolution Copper. So that's helped them, but that was very early on. Most of our business community has not been able to successfully use the PPP programs, mostly because our businesses are micro businesses. Their businesses support their day-to-day family business. It's not set up in the same way that a traditional corporation or LLC might be set up. So we have to get a little creative in finding some ways to allow them to access. We've heard from one business owner who's lost about $30,000 in revenue and sales just this year, just these few months alone, because it was her peak season. So we want you know, we feel that this, keeping our businesses open and functioning and giving them some relief is really, really important right now. So any questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve.
There's a motion by Councilmember Estatico. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Navarrete. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I,
Any opposed? Motion carries. I'm going to go to call to the public. Is there anyone on the line that would like to address the council? And you'll need to speak up really loud as you possibly can.
This is Sue. I would like to bring it into the phone. Can you hear me? I'm not giving any feedback. I'm just going to make it very brief to piggyback on the comment about legal superior having a cemetery cleanup. It's the first of many, June 27th from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. only. You can come for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you can tolerate in the heat. It's a horrible time to start a project like this, but the cemetery needs a lot of help. The businesses have been opening, they're doing pretty well. I talk to them on a regular basis from a chamber and a personal standpoint. And they're doing, as well as they normally do in the summer months, which is really great. And as you know, because it's now distributed also, they're all being offered masks, and we have sanitizing lotions in every business, that kind of thing to make it better. It's slow because it's summer and people are a little leery as far as COVID goes, but they are open, and I really encourage every one of us to go and frequent as many as we can. Get a takeout sandwich or a pizza or something from the restaurants. I'm not a takeout person, but I've been going regularly just to help these businesses, and we can all work together, help them stay alive. Because Neela said it's very, very difficult right now. That's all I have. Thank you all very much.
Council, did you hear Ms. Anderson a little bit better?
Not really.
She basically said, thank you for the town's support. Go out and eat takeout, get a sandwich, and support our local businesses. And please come out to the Rebuild Superior cleanup.
At the cemetery.
At the cemetery. All right, no further calls to the public. There's no further calls to the public. We also do not have any executive session items, so we're going to move on to the summary of current events, and I will start with Councilmember Armitage.
I have nothing, thank you.
No comment? Councilmember Navarrete?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Councilmember Estatico?
Just a couple things. The Superior Unified School District has put out a survey of parents and guardians to give us input into reopening schools for the 2020-2021 school year. Please take the time to complete the survey. All data helps us in our decision making to reopen schools.
Thank you, Mr. Estatico, and thank you to the school district for finding a safe way to host graduation. Councilmember Aguilar.
good morning, everyone, be safe.
Councilmember Lopez.
Councilmember Lopez doesn't have any comments, just everybody be safe and take care.
Vice Mayor Alonso.
I just want to say thank you guys for working with the school and the town and all the other agencies for the school graduation, fireworks and all that. Fire department did a great job. Hopefully we can have 4th of July fireworks. Everyone have a safe 4th.
All right, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. And Council, I just want to thank you. I know this makes our jobs a little bit more difficult by these strange meetings. Thank you to the public who participates, but most importantly, thank you to our staff who's keeping us organized and keeping us all moving forward. I believe they'll be getting some ideas out for 4th of July here soon. And just everybody stay safe, wear a mask if you're comfortable. And with that being said, I will call, we will go to scheduling of meetings, emergency services, June 18th, community development, June 25th, planning and zoning, July 2nd, town council, July 9th, And we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Councilmember Statico, second by Councilmember Lopez. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion, we adjourned at 8:19. Thank you, council.
Good
Thank
job.
you to everyone on the line and those watching on YouTube.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody. Well, now we know where that mic's at.
Yeah, but maybe they get an external speaker for it if we have to do this again next month. Hopefully this is gonna end someday.
As soon as we get